So in today's video, we are going to be discussing what is still the biggest concern with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's jump right into the video. So this offseason was obviously a massive one for Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs front office and the organization as a whole. There was a lot of spots and a lot of holes that the Chiefs had to fill this offseason because of the departures of big names like Tyreek Hill getting traded to Miami, Tyrann Mathieu signing with the Saints. They lost Charvarius Ward on the defense, Melvin Ingram left. There was a lot of holes that the Chiefs had to fill this offseason, and it was a big offseason for the Chiefs, and they've addressed every single position on the football field that they needed to address. But it still does leave a bit of concern for specific spots on the football team. Now, offensively, I think the offense is fine. Obviously, the losing Tyreek Hill on the offense is going to take a minute probably to adjust, but offensively, I think the Chiefs are going to be just fine in every aspect. They still have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, the best QB tight end duo probably in the NFL right now. And then you have guys like Juju, MVS, McCole Hardman. They drafted Sky Moore, Justin Ross. So the offense as a whole, while it's going to be a different schemed offense, the offense may look a little bit different with Tyreek Hill gone. The weapons and the caliber of players that are on the Chiefs offense are still there. So offensively, they're going to be fine. Offensive line is great. The offensive line with Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and then whether it's Andrew Wiley, Lucas Niang, or their rookie Darian Kennard playing on that right side, that offensive line is built perfectly to run the football. So the run game might be more prominent because of the departure of like Tyreek Hill not being on the offense. And you have Clyde, who, you know, he can be frustrating at times, but he's very good inside the 5-yard line specifically. He's a power runner. You have Ronald Jones, who they signed from the Buccaneers. He's going to probably have a bit of a chip on his shoulder too. He's a very explosive guy. And then you have Isaiah Pacheco, who was the fastest running back at this year's combine. And he also mentioned that he has a chip on his shoulder, so he may be playing with a bit of an edge this year. So overall, offensively, everything's fine from the offensive line to the wide receiving core to the running backs, and obviously to the quarterback, because, you know, Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, is the best quarterback in the NFL. And then you have the defensive side of the ball, which was obviously, in my opinion, the biggest thing that they had to fix. You know, Tyreek Hill being gone, it was still something that they had to fix. The wide receiving core, something they still had to fix. And even with Tyreek Hill there, it's still something they had to address. But obviously on the defensive side of the ball is something that needed addressed a little bit more with the Chiefs. Now, and I think they absolutely nailed the defensive side of the ball because it was a tall task. As we mentioned, Tyrann Mathieu being gone from the defensive side of the ball was going to be a huge hit for Kansas City because he was a great player. Honestly, the greatest free agent signing in Kansas City Chiefs history. And now that they lost him, you know, that's a lot of shoes that they're going to have to fill. And I think they did a good job of that. They drafted Brian Cook. They brought in Justin Reed, who I think is a great player, two very physical players. They addressed the corner position. They drafted Trent McDuffie in the first round. So I think overall, when it comes to the secondary part of the defense, I think they addressed it perfectly. You know, Charvarius Ward left. The Chiefs needed that number one corner. They got that in Trent McDuffie. So overall, when it came to the defensive side of the ball, the secondaries in particular, I think the Chiefs nailed it, and they hit on that side of the ball. The linebacking core, I think they absolutely nailed too. You know, you already had Willie Gay, Nick Bolton there. So two really great star players that we love watching the last few years. And then obviously you have Jermaine Carter that they brought in this offseason. And then they just drafted Leo Chanel, who is another very, very physical dude who will hit you very hard, and he makes sure that you know that he's there. So overall, the physicality of the defense is going to be there. But the biggest issue with the Chiefs right now, the one thing that Kansas City still has me concerned, the one thing that would still need to be improved when it comes to the Chiefs is the defensive line. And that's not to take away the fact that Brett Veach did everything he could, you know, in every aspect of the team, because you can't just focus on one aspect of a team and try to improve. You have to try to improve everywhere. Obviously, you want to fill the biggest holes that you have on the team, but then you also still have to look at every position that you have on the football field, try to improve them as well. And defensive line was obviously the biggest hole on this entire football team. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is gone, Tyrann Mathieu, Charvarius Ward. I mean, a lot of people that were key in the Chiefs' success were gone, but the defensive line was one of the biggest issues with Kansas City last year. And it was evident for the first few weeks of the season before Melvin Ingram got there, because the Chiefs' defensive line was so, we should have saw this coming at the beginning of the year last year, that Chris Jones was playing defensive end. Like when we saw that Chris Jones was playing defensive end last year, we should have known that there was a problem with this Chiefs defense and the Chiefs defensive line, and that they had a massive problem on their hands, and it wasn't just going to be an easy fix, and they had a long road ahead of them. Now, they did kind of ease the pain last year when they brought in Melvin Ingram, who I thought was key and vital to the success of the Chiefs and helping them become a better football team defensively, because he made an impact immediately when he came there. The Chiefs defense instantly got better. Now, there's a lot of factors to that. First of all, Chris Jones did move back inside to his natural position at defensive tackle, and so that instantly became a reason why the defense, while it wasn't going to destroy the world, while it wasn't going to be great, it was definitely much better having Chris Jones at his natural position at defensive tackle, and we saw that immediately. So Melvin Ingram coming in, obviously Melvin Ingram was vital to the success of the defense in his own aspect, in his own way, but at the same time, when you have another guy on that edge that can rush the passer from the edge, from their natural position, and allow Chris Jones to do his work inside, it's going to help the football team, and it's going to help everybody else around them succeed and become better. So I think that was the right move, bringing in Melvin Ingram. But you also have to look at the fact that Melvin Ingram is gone now. I would have loved for Melvin Ingram to be there longer, but obviously he wanted to go to Miami. He didn't want to come back to Kansas City. They placed the tender, the tags on him, whatever tag it was. So obviously Melvin Ingram is gone, but they did draft George Karlaftis, and I think that's where Brett Veach did a really good job in helping improve the defensive line. But it still is a bit of concern. I mean, while I think George Karlaftis can make an impact, he can be a great player on that defensive line, it's still not fair, in my opinion, to put all that pressure on George Karlaftis to be the difference maker, to be the reason why this defensive line is better. I don't think that's a fair judgment to have on a rookie. Now, if we're talking year 2 and 3, yeah, obviously George Karlaftis has to be the guy that's making a difference on that defensive line. But his rookie year, I still think it's going to be kind of a learning curve. I still think this defensive line is going to take a lot of time to gel and mesh. Like I said, you can't have a rookie being the key factor. You can't put all the pressure on the rookie. And you also have to realize Frank Clark, while he was injured and missed a few games last year, he had his worst season as a pro since his rookie year. This defensive line as a whole was really bad. They only had 31 sacks, and they ranked 29th in the NFL when it came to sacks. So the defensive line was pretty rough last year. It felt like the defensive line was missing at times. And like I said, they've done things to improve it. George Karlaftis came in. They had added Taylor Stallworth, who I think he can be a key factor, and he can, help at least when it comes to the run game. They re-signed Derek Nottie, so he's going to be a factor when it comes to the run game as well. Joshua Kando, who missed all of last season, basically didn't really play that much. He may make an impact if he gets more playing time, gets better, improves. He can make an impact. And then Mike Dana, say what you want, he doesn't play very many snaps, and he had basically the same production as Frank Clark last year. So overall, the defensive line, it did get better. It did add pieces, but it still is something that needs to be improved. But the Chiefs did add a new defensive line coach in Joe Cullen to lead that group of guys on that line. So you could, hopefully the defensive line does play better. He did expect a lot of these guys on the defensive line to have a career year, to have better seasons under his tutelage. So that's something that we can really look forward to. And when Joe Cullen did have his press conference, he did mention that Chris Jones is one of the best defensive tackles that he has ever seen. Now, for the Chiefs and the success of that defensive line, never remove him from the defensive tackle position. I think that is pretty obvious how successful Chris Jones is inside. He's a game wrecker inside. So I think it's important for Chris Jones to stay there. He says he did mention that Chris Jones will move around based off the scheme that they are playing. But for me personally, I don't think that's necessarily going to put the defense in the best spot to succeed and become a successful defense, especially on the defensive line. I think Chris Jones has to stay in his natural position. Now, if you want to play other guys outside of their scheme and outside of their position, Leo Chanel, if you want to put him as the other edge rusher on the outside, while I think he needs to stay in his natural position at linebacker, if you want to use him on, a couple third downs throughout the season, throughout the year, that is fine. But for Chris Jones in particular, he's got to stay there. And then Frank Clark obviously has to be better. He was MIA most of last year. I know he missed some games, but his production, did not have a good season. He had a very rough season. And overall, the defensive line as a whole is the biggest concern, I think, with Kansas City. But I do think that they did a lot of things to try to improve it. Obviously, drafting George Karlaftis, they brought in Taylor Stallworth, they re-signed Derek Nottie, and they have a new defensive line coach. So there's a lot of things that are going for Kansas City that lead to a lot of promise and lead to a lot of things that can help make this defensive line become successful this next season. But that is what I think is the biggest concern for Kansas City heading into next season. Give me your thoughts down below, and I will see you in the next one.